Corey, thank you very much. Good day, everyone. Thank you for taking some time on a beautiful day in Regina to be with me for my discussion today. It's certainly exciting times. We did have a great discussion at our table about some of the economic growth that is happening both in the city, but also Saskatchewan-wide. It is great to see the record-breaking economic numbers from Saskatchewan. The increase in the population is found out in the latest census, and all of the opportunities that are here from everything from agriculture and mining and natural resources to services that are part and parcel of economic growth as well. This is truly the new land of opportunity. We were talking a little bit about the Premier's visit to Ireland recently and how emotional that was, but how people were literally lining up around the block to learn more about becoming part and parcel of the economic situation here in Saskatchewan. So this is a place where ingenuity and the aspirations and the determination of people, either newcomers or people who've been here for generations, can be met, and really it is a great Canadian story, not just a great Saskatchewan story. I am going to be talking a little bit about three ways the government is helping to leverage our country's economic strengths. So I will be looking at the economic situation that Canada faces today. I'll also be looking at some of the ways government is helping businesses succeed. And third, I'll be talking about the use of new communications platforms to transform the way that government can serve Canadians better. Now, I'm, as Corey mentioned, the president of the Treasury Board, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you. Tom knows it means a lot to some people in Ottawa, but it's hard to describe. Although when I'm in Washington, I must say, when I'm in Washington, to say you're president of the Treasury Board, actually, they think, wow, you've got president and treasury in your name. That's pretty good. But I'm not quite sure what it means. The story I like to tell, a true story, when I was elevated to this position by the Prime Minister after the last election, just about 3 weeks after the election, there was a state visit that the Prime Minister was doing to, of all places, Greece. And he asked me to come along because my father's Greek heritage, and so they wanted me along for the ride and talk a little bit, since we were talking about balancing budgets and things like that. They wanted me along for those discussions as well. A week before the visit, however, as is typically the case, there was a person from our Prime Minister's office who would have been helping to organize the visit a little bit, and he was having discussions with the Prime Minister's office in Greece, going over the schedule of Prime Minister Harper, and oh, by the way, Tony Clement is coming along. His father's of Greek heritage. He's president of the Treasury Board. And the Greeks asked, "What's a president of the Treasury Board?" And this person from Mr. Harper's office said, "Well, before any minister can spend a dime, he has to get the approval of the president of the Treasury Board." And the Greeks said, "Well, that's a really good idea. We should have thought that." So that gives you a little bit of a sense of what the president of the Treasury Board is anyway. And of course, we're having this discussion in the context. The context is that we delivered our budget just a couple of weeks ago, and it is in the context of some of the challenges that we as Canadians face. They're a little bit different, perhaps, than some of the challenges of our trading partners, because we do have labor shortages, and we have the need to make sure that we can meet the growth that is inherent in our economy. At the same time, we know that the global recovery has been slower than people would have hoped. It is fragile, we know that. We know that our Canadian economy has performed rather well against relative to the other developed countries, which is good news for us. I would say that when you look at our gross domestic product, our GDP, it is now significantly above pre-recession levels. It is the strongest job growth here in Canada amongst the G7 highly industrialized countries over the course of the recovery. Since the depths of the recession, which was almost 3 years ago now, our economy has added 690,000 net new jobs in our economy. And that, of course, was aided by the latest job news that just came out last week for the month of March, where 82,000 jobs were added just in the month of March alone. That is good news across Canada. A lot of the growth has happened in Western Canada, but those numbers were significant because most of those increased job numbers were in Ontario and Quebec, areas of the country that had not seen large job growth in the past. So that is a good sign as well. But we know, being Canadians, and you know, here in Saskatchewan, probably better than most, that we do look to the global economy for signs of future economic growth, and we know that when parts of the world face economic difficulty, it can impact on our ability to create jobs and opportunities. So we cannot rest on our laurels. We know that we have to keep making the right public policy decisions, both in the provincial governments across the country, but also, of course, at the federal level as well. We know that no country is immune to these new challenges. You just have to look either across the pond at the Eurozone, where they continue to grapple with the high debt levels in certain countries. Look at the UK, where they are currently reducing the size of their public service by 500,000 people. That's just the reduction. And it shows the depths of the recession that they were facing and some of the issues of growth in public sector debt that they were facing. Of course, in the United States, we've seen some positive signs in the economy south of the border, but at the same time, people are waiting for Washington to make some decisions, and we know, being Canadians, that because of their electoral cycle, those decisions are not likely to be made until January, after the congressional elections and after the presidential elections. So a lot of question marks in the United States. That's the context. Good news in Canada, still some mixed news outside of our borders, which means that we cannot rest on our laurels. We have to continue to make the right decisions. And I think one of the indicators of the right set of decisions was Budget 2012. It allowed us to face these realities. It allows us to emerge, continue to see new signs of growth, stronger than ever. And really the focus in Budget 2012, which was more than just the ledger, the typical ledger of revenues and expenses that one would find in a typical public sector budget. That's a given. But the Budget 2012 went far beyond that in terms of identifying the drivers of job creation and long-term growth and prosperity, and focusing in on those. Innovation, investment, education, skills development, and supporting our communities. Those are themes that you'll find in Budget 2012, and certainly there are new measures in each of those areas to strengthen our economy and really draw on the entrepreneurial sector's role as a driving force behind economic growth. And as a chamber, you know that. That's part of who you are. That's part of your own job or your own business. But it's also something that has to be represented and reflected in a budget, and that's what we did in Budget 2012. We are, of course, still funding programs that are important to the fabric of our society, or that are a priority for Canadians, and really striking the right balance between supporting economic growth and job creation, but returning to balance in our own budget, returning to a balanced budget in 3 years' time at the outside. So that really brings me to my second point, and I want to sort of drill down on some aspects of the budget and show you how the government is helping Canadian business to succeed, because that really, as I say, is the key to economic growth in the future. Of course, we've done a lot already. We've done much to make it easier for Canadian businesses to get ahead. We know that low taxes, which continues to be our mantra, does help an economy compete. It helps businesses to grow, and that has been something that we have continued in this budget. But we also know that businesses must be supported by a modern regulatory environment that helps promote competition, business investment, and economic growth. And really, it's not just about an efficient and low tax system or a well-functioning financial system. I'm glad our bankers are here today. But it means other things as well. For instance, access to international markets. That's got to be a key to growth as well. And when you look at some of the key commitments we've made, all of those areas, of course, will be improved. Let me talk a little bit about something that I'm very much involved in as President of the Treasury Board, and that's cutting red tape, reducing the regulatory burden on our businesses, particularly our small and medium-sized businesses that are represented, well represented by the Chamber, of course. We know, and you know as business people, I know as a former small business owner myself, that we know that red tape impedes economic productivity. In fact, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business estimates that when you add up all the cost of the regulatory burden on Canadian businesses, just Canadian businesses, lost time, diverting time and attention away from your business because you've got to fill out forms. I remember, small business owner myself, you know, the forms would come in and you'd be filling them out in triplicate, answering all these questions, spending a day or days to do that. You send them in, and then the next day, another department or agency, maybe in the same level of government or a different level of government, asking the same questions again. I see the heads nodding. You know what I'm talking about. All of that does cost the economy because it is diverting time and attention away from creating wealth. The total cost of red tape is around $30 billion every year for our businesses. So this is a big problem, a very big problem. And when you cut red tape, when you reduce the regulatory burden, I'm not talking about health and safety and the things that we want a safe society, but when you cut those things, you are helping small businesses invest, you're helping small businesses stay competitive, and they're spending less time complying with redundant regulatory requirements. And so it helps us with our economic recovery, obviously. It helps us create jobs and growth. And that's why it's important. That's why it's part of our budget. That's why it's an important initiative. It's part of the job that I'm doing as President of the Treasury Board. So we had created, Prime Minister Harper, before the last election actually, had created a red tape reduction commission, which had not only MPs on it, but it also had representatives of small business at the table. They went around the country. They heard from small businesses. Perhaps they had a session here in Regina. I know they had sessions in Saskatchewan for sure. And they came up with a number of recommendations on how to reduce the regulatory burden. I accepted that report. I will be acting on it. But one of the things I did, the minute I got the report, was to announce that we were, as a government, accepting what is called the one-for-one rule. It just came into effect on just the beginning of this month. And this is a direct effort to control the administrative burden on business. It means that for those departments of the federal government that are regulating, there is a new rule, started April 1st, that says for every new rule you put into place that affects small business, you've got to find one of the old redundant rules that is still there, not having any impact, a regulatory burden, doesn't affect health or safety. You've got to find one of those rules and take it off the books. That's the one-to-one rule. It's an important rule. I'll tell you why it's important. First of all, it means that the additional burden on small business will not be the case. That we'll make sure that the rules be taken off the books. You can't have a rule taken off the books that's 2 lines and then a rule being on the books that's 80 pages. So it's got to be commensurate. That's another key aspect of this. And we're going to make sure that we're not adding, at least, to the regulatory burden while we're reducing red tape in other areas. But the other thing it does, and I think this is very important, it starts to change the culture in official Ottawa. And Tom knows this as well, of course, that really, the structure of things in Ottawa is when you're faced with a problem, we've got a problem, what do? Okay, let's regulate it. That's the go-to for every problem that arises. We've got to change the culture there so that the go-to point is not to find a new regulation to solve a problem. There's lots of ways to solve problems. You don't have to automatically go to regulation. And so the way you get that through to the system is you have something like a one-for-one rule, because what you're doing is you're adding the cost of trying to find trying to create a new regulation. That's why it's important. It changes the mindset. So when we have problems that need to be solved, we're not always going to regulation. There's lots of other things that we could do that could solve a problem without adding to the regulatory burden of small business. And so that must stop, and that's why this rule is important. Let me also talk about, I think, something that's very important for Saskatchewan, which is the new era of regulatory cooperation with the United States. Now, Prime Minister Harper was in Washington. He's been there a couple times since then, but in December he was there to announce with President Obama the new Beyond the Border initiative, which included some security measures, of course, but it also included a new Canada-U.S. Regulatory Cooperation Council, and I'm involved in that process as well. But basically the idea is to make sure the border isn't getting any thicker, that we actually try to thin the border for businesses operating on both sides of the border. We know that two-way trade with the United States is $1 billion a day, and so this is our most important trade relationship. And so we are finding ways to lower costs for business on both sides of the border, reduce the administrative burden, have more efficient cross-border trading, and as I say, I'm happy to be involved with that as the Treasury Board President. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is pest control regulations, something of great importance to Saskatchewan farmers. Why do we need two sets of regulations, one north, one south of the border when it comes to pest control, pest management? Very easy to make sure health and safety is looked after, but have a common set of regulations so it's easier to import or export pest control chemicals, as an example. Another one that's perhaps more germane to Ontario, but is important for us as Canadians as well, is we're into a new world of new hybrid car vehicles, obviously, or fully electric vehicles that rely on long life batteries. But of course, those batteries have to be safe. And so there will be some regulations, some safety regulations relating to car batteries. But these are going to be new regulations, and the question we have to ask ourselves is, why do we need one set of regulations in Canada and another set of regulations in the United States? Let's have one common set of regulations so that when Canadians create long life car batteries, they'll have immediate access to the American market, and vice versa. And so again, common sense. Before we create new regulation, let's make sure that we can harmonize and make them coherent on both sides of the border. Let me talk a little bit about the budget and natural resources, of course, very important to this province and other provinces as well. And Budget 2012 did take action to leverage our natural resources potential, new measures to support energy and mineral exploration. And of course, we were talking about this at the table, we cannot be in a situation where with our large projects, be they pipelines or mines, they cannot take 10 years to complete the reviews and consultations on those projects. Yes, we need reviews. Yes, we need consultations. But when it becomes an end in itself, without ever any ending to it, it actually is not in the national interest. So we are very committed to one project, one review. You will be hearing from us in the weeks ahead on how we intend to move on this, and I think this will be good news for any province, which is most provinces, that have natural resources that they seek to exploit and develop and find the markets for. And I think this is going to be important for our future economic growth as well. Let me talk a little bit about trade, because again, this is something that the Chamber, and I'm sure Saskatchewan, cares a lot about. We want to continue to trade on a global scale, and what the budget did signal is that we will be expanding trade, opening new markets for Canadian businesses. We recognize that restrictions on imports and investment stifle our exporters, but at the same time, we have sought bilateral and multilateral agreements with many countries. And indeed, we've, in less than 6 years, concluded new free trade agreements with 9 countries. We have brought into force foreign investment promotion and protection agreements with 10 other countries, and are in negotiations with 10 others. And of course, you've seen from the Prime Minister's travels that we are serious about opening up new markets. Canada, China. His very successful trip to China recently. Canada, Korea. Canada, Thailand. Canada, Japan. Canada, India. Obviously, these are all, most of them are high growth or highly developed economies. Great new markets for our finished and our natural resources goods. Canada, EU, another important trade negotiation taking place right now, which promises to give us greater access to a market of 540 million consumers, rich consumers. We're not as rich as last year, but still rich. And of course, that's going to be important, as important as our trade with the United States is, to have those new markets is going to be important for future growth and opportunity. Finally, just talking about the budget, let me just talk about people, because obviously that's something that ultimately our success as a nation rests upon, the full productive potential of people. And obviously, when you look at the budget, you will see significant investments in training, in infrastructure, new opportunities, job creation by small businesses. We want to reduce the cost of hiring new workers for small businesses. That's why we extended the EI hiring credit for small businesses for another year. And we're investing as well. This isn't just a budget about spending within our means, but where we find areas where we should invest, we are investing. So we are investing in business R&D. We're doubling the investment in the IRAP program, which is there specifically to help small businesses commercialize their innovations. We are changing around and making better as a result of some great recommendations from a small business committee, our business support for R&D, because while our support for public R&D and universities and so on is second to none in the highly industrialized world, we are falling behind in the results of business R&D and how to make sure those are commercialized and find their place to markets. We were talking a little bit as well, we were talking about people, about training. And this is not only about, this is about training ourselves to make sure our kids and our grandkids get the proper training, and we are investing the resources in that, but also new investments in the budget for training those on First Nations reserves. And I know Saskatchewan has had some success in this. We've got to have these successes across the country, because if you've got 70% unemployment on reserve while at the same time having job shortages or skilled job shortages, where we're developing our resources, clearly that's not an acceptable situation. So you'll be hearing more in the weeks ahead about how we intend to get better training on reserve. But it also means finding the right newcomers and having better immigration policies. And as I listen to the stories about Premier Wall's trip to Ireland, it really underlined the point that we've got to do a better job of proactively, just as that trip was, proactively finding those with the right skills rather than just waiting for the applications to come in. And we've had a situation where skilled people apply to come to Canada even, and there is an 8-year wait for a reply. By then they're probably in Australia. So that's not good enough. And while I'm here talking to you, Jason Kenny's in Saskatoon, talking about how we're going to change that system around, how we're going to focus in on proactively finding the people with the right skills and finding a quicker way, a much quicker way, weeks rather than years, of getting them to a yes in the system so they can be accepted into our society and find that right job, which will help our economy grow as well. So that is part of our budget as well. Let me finally talk a little bit about something else I'm involved in as Treasury Board President, which I think has some resonance for small business, and that's talking about open government. And let me just first of all say a little bit of history on this file and what this means. We have, since our first election in 2006, endorsed the principles of transparency and accountability. In fact, Canada was one of the first countries to enact access to information. When we got into power, we immediately created something called the Federal Accountability Act, which expanded the coverage of the access to information legislation. And we brought new measures to help strengthen accountability and increase the transparency and oversight in government operations. In addition, federal departments and agencies are required to proactively disclose information about contracts, grants, and contributions, as well as hospitality and travel expenses, to ensure that Canadians and Parliament have a better ability to hold the government and public sector officials, the bureaucrats, into account. Another government-wide initiative was launched last March 2011, to expand open government and enhance transparency and accountability to Canadians. And this commitment to advance open government principles was reconfirmed after we won re-election in May and was found in our speech from the throne in June of last year. So the Open Government Initiative is not only about what Canada is doing, but we're actually part of an open government movement around the world. It's a broader international partnership with 54 like-minded countries called the Open Government Partnership. And one of our commitments is to present an action plan to open. The action plan will be relating to open government and will demonstrate Canada's commitment to provide Canadians with easier and improved access to the government. And I'm using part of my speech today to make this announcement that we have completed Canada's first ever Open Government Action Plan. And this action plan was shaped by public consultations, including the first ever live Twitter chat that I did with Canadians by the Government of Canada. And I wanted to share just a couple of elements of this Open Government Action Plan with you. First, there are 12 initiatives in our Open Government Action Plan, fit into 3 streams that our government will begin implementing over the next 3 years. The 3 streams are open information, open data, and open dialogue. First, open information. This is about proactively releasing information on government activities. In this area, for example, we will be working with departments to make their publications and their scientific data and research results more openly available. And this will have a number of benefits. It will increase the ability of non-government researchers to use and build on the knowledge that has been acquired through government research. It will enable authors to reach a broader audience and increase the impact of their research, and it will increase the awareness of research findings for policymakers and the public. We'll also be implementing a new universal open government license, and this will remove restrictions on the reuse of any published Government of Canada information and will provide the reuse of this information in innovative ways. Just to give you an example, any published government report would be automatically available and will have fewer legal barriers to reuse by the public. Canadians also told us they wanted a one-stop shop portal for government information with a user-friendly search engine that searches all Government of Canada websites simultaneously. We are certainly committed to developing a more efficient way for users to easily find the services and information they're looking for, and I will be consulting further with the users to find the right approach to that. Open data. We're also taking measures to make data more freely available to all Canadians in an open and usable format. We already have an open data portal, and there are over 272,000 data sets now available from federal organizations. This has just all happened in the last couple of years. Today I can announce that 3 more departments have joined the effort, and approximately 150 new data sets have been made available. We will also be developing the next generation platform for the delivery of this open data, and this will include better search capabilities, more Web 2.0 features, and open data standards. And while I'm here in Regina, I better congratulate the city for embracing open government too, because this city became in February the first government in Saskatchewan to launch an internet-based open data portal. And I understand that data from the city has already spurred the founder of Open Data SK.ca to develop new mobile phone applications. And that's the beauty of open data for small businesses. When you have this data, you can actually create mobile apps that businesses can create and create services for citizens that citizens are willing to buy. So it's good for business as well as good for government. Finally, just a few brief words about open dialogue. It's obviously another important feature of open government and our action plan. We're going to be using Web 2.0 tools, and we want to give Canadians a stronger say in government policies and priorities, get people more engaged. We want to tap into their ideas and talents, and we'll be using things like crowdsourcing, where we can get a bunch of people together who have an interest in a particular file or a particular public policy goal, and get their points of view and make sure we can be more responsive to their needs and expectations. That's what my Twitter town hall was all about, where we had literally hundreds of tweets come in a space of just a few minutes in both official languages, by the way. And some of the ideas were very helpful today with creating the plan that I'm announcing today. Canadians also told us they want improved tools and websites for engaging them, and so we'll be exploring options for a new citizen engagement platform. We'll also be providing guidance to federal departments on the use of Web 2.0 technologies for conducting public consultations, developing ideas and solutions through crowdsourcing, as I mentioned, and reporting on the results. I really believe that these things will help us with innovation. It's not just about the dialogue between the citizen and the public. It's about more innovation, more economic opportunity, and really getting us to the forefront again where Canada used to be when it comes to online. And I hope you'll find that this new action plan will help your businesses in your goals, your information goals, just as it will help citizens from across the country. Just to sum up then, ladies and gentlemen, just feeding back to the budget once again, I hope you'll agree with us that we're taking measured steps that will grow our economy. And this really is perhaps the most basic responsibility of government, to foster the prosperity that underpins our quality of life. But all of this, keeping our fiscal house in order, helping Canadians and their businesses to succeed, making the public service more efficient, is more than just the story of good government. It's the story of Canadians and our optimism. We believe in ourselves. We have faith in our future, and we are striving for our full potential. And I fully believe that Budget 2012 will help us do just that. The Prime Minister expressed it best in his speech at Davos, Switzerland, earlier this winter, when he called on world leaders to make tough but necessary choices. Canada's choice, he said, will be with clarity and urgency to seize and to master our future, to be a model of confidence, growth, and prosperity in the 21st century. That's what he said, and that was more than a challenge just to world leaders. It really was a call to Canadians to remember how we got to our successes to date, and with the confidence that we have to build on our future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I've got a few questions. I think you may have answered some of them, but I'll answer them anyways. What measures will the federal government be taking to facilitate immigration to address skill shortages in Western Canada?
So I absolutely did answer that, and I just want you to know this is something that comes up not only in Saskatchewan, by the way. When I do roundtables in Ontario, even, businesses say their biggest problem is finding the right skilled people to help them grow. So we have heard that loud and clear. That's why we do. Tom does these things as well. All of our Conservative MPs, pre-budget, we go around the country, we hold roundtables with citizens and businesses, and we feed that feedback into the budget process. And that's what we were hearing, quite frankly, that it wasn't all about unemployment. It was the opposite issue, which was matching the right people with the skills needs that businesses have. So we've heard that message loud and clear, and you'll be hearing from us in the weeks ahead.
Great. Just because the opportunity's here, you were here the last time, do you have any comment? You don't have to answer this one. Do you have any comments on the Viterra deal and what the federal government will be looking for?
I'm still waiting for that statute we built, Tom. You can always get a statute on the VHP deal. But look, I can only speak as a former minister. I don't know the details of the investment. If this is a reviewable case, it's very clear in the Investment Canada Act that there has to be a net benefit to Canada, and there's a series of tools in the toolbox in the Investment Canada Act to judge whether an investment is of net benefit to Canada. So if this is reviewable, then the minister will, my successor, will have on his shoulders the burden of going through that process. And the Act is very clear. It's the minister. He or she has that burden. And you take it very seriously. I can tell you from experience with the BHP deal, you take that very seriously. And you really remove yourself from politics, because it doesn't say in the Investment Canada Act, look at the politics of the deal. It says, look at the net benefit to Canada. And that's the only test you can apply. And that's how I did it, and I'm sure my successor, if this is reviewable, will do the same thing.
Great. Last question I have. I believe you've answered most of this. I don't have the right glasses on today, sorry. Do you see open government policies helping to reduce red tape?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of things coming together to reduce red tape. First of all, we've got the recommendations. There's over 100 recommendations from the Red Tape Reduction Commission. So you'll be hearing from me later about how we're going to chunk all those out and some of these recommendations, by the way, are very specific. We've heard from businesses. It's not just like, reduce red tape, please. It's this department or this division of this department with this red tape rule is killing business. Please do something about this particular rule. So we've got lots of examples where we can really follow up. And so you'll be hearing from me on that. And the good news about open government is, if we can keep the dialogue going, we're going to be getting lots of other feedback on rules that are either misapplied or don't work anymore, or too much a burden on business without any resulting benefit to society. So keep those cards and letters coming. We'll have a way to definitely keep active on this spot.
Great. Well, Minister, thank you very much for all you do for Canadians across the country. Thank you.